The shock of the attack left the world in chaos. Across the globe, people scrambled for answers, but there were none to be found. The alien forces had arrived so swiftly, so unexpectedly, that there had been no time to prepare. Governments, military forces, and even the people who once believed in the safety of their homeland found themselves powerless against the alien onslaught. Cities were decimated in hours, whole populations wiped out without a single warning. As the attack began, it seemed like the end of the world. Despair and panic gripped humanity like a vice, and it seemed as though survival was no longer a possibility. But in the midst of the destruction, something unexpected happened. People didn't give up. They fought back. In every corner of the planet, survivors started to rise from the ashes. Despite the overwhelming enemy force, the human spirit refused to be extinguished. Small pockets of resistance began to form, not only in military bases, but in urban ruins where people had once lived peaceful lives. The survivors came together, determined to find a way to fight back. They knew that survival meant more than just hiding or hoping for rescue. It meant standing up, no matter how dire the odds. Among the survivors, leaders began to emerge, not just military commanders, but everyday people who refused to give in. A young engineer named Sarah, who had been caught in the blast of the first wave in New York City, somehow managed to survive. She woke up in the rubble, confused but alive, with nothing but the wreckage of her former life around her. But in her, there was a spark of hope. She couldn't bear the thought of her city lying in ruins with no one left to fight for it. She found her way to a group of survivors who, despite the odds, were banding together to fight. Together, they took refuge in the remains of old government bunkers that had once been designed for nuclear warfare. These bunkers, meant to protect against the worst, had now become humanity's last chance. Sarah wasn't alone. All around the world, stories like hers were unfolding. A group of military veterans in Moscow, who had once fought in the forgotten conflicts of Earth, found themselves fighting once more, but this time for the survival of their planet. The world's greatest minds, too, had survived the carnage. In hidden laboratories and secret shelters, they began to piece together fragments of alien technology and human ingenuity. It was in these dark moments, when all seemed lost, that humanity's ability to adapt began to shine. News of the attacks spread across the globe, and despite the destruction, people still clung to the idea that there was hope. News anchors, struggling to maintain their composure on live broadcasts, began to report the unthinkable. Humanity had not been wiped out. Despite the loss of cities, despite the global chaos, the human race was not ready to surrender. In these dark days, a sense of unity that had never been seen before began to form. Old animosities between nations seemed to vanish as leaders from around the world agreed on one thing: survival. The war wasn't over yet, but humanity had not given up. As the weeks passed and the immediate danger from the aliens subsided, Earth's people began to recover. Makeshift governments formed, rallying together to provide what little support they could. They did what they had to do: gather survivors, treat the injured, and rebuild. But more than anything, they started to think about revenge. Earth would not allow itself to be crushed again. Though no one had expected it, humanity had found the strength to keep fighting. As the alien forces regrouped, they did not realize that they had made a mistake by underestimating humanity. The first battle had been won by the aliens, but that was all they had won. The survivors, soldiers, civilians, scientists, were more determined than ever. They had a deep need to take back their world, to restore their homes, their families, and everything they had lost. But more importantly, they wanted revenge for the lives that had been stolen, for the cities that had been reduced to rubble, for the families that would never again be whole. Meanwhile, the global resistance began to organize. Survivors from all walks of life contributed in any way they could. Some provided food and shelter, while others began to work on fighting back. Scientists like Sarah worked tirelessly, poring over the wreckage of alien ships and remnants of their technology. She began to see patterns, something that might be the key to stopping them. It was not just about retaliation anymore. It was about survival, but with the added goal of ending this war once and for all. As the weeks turned into months, it became clear humanity was beginning to build something strong, something the invaders would never have expected. But the aliens, too, were regrouping. The first wave had been devastating, but they underestimated humanity's will to fight. The aliens had assumed that their advanced weaponry, their vast numbers, and their technological superiority would crush Earth's forces without much of a struggle. What they hadn't counted on was the resilience and adaptability of humanity. What had started as a desperate fight for survival was now becoming a battle for justice. The alien forces had made a critical mistake. They had provoked a force far stronger than they realized. Now, Earth's survivors were determined to make them pay. The shock of survival had given rise to a new generation of fighters, ready to reclaim their planet, and they were willing to do whatever it took. This wasn't just about holding on to hope anymore. It wasn't about simply surviving. This was about vengeance, about making sure that the invaders would never be able to strike again. Humanity was coming back, stronger than ever. The shock of survival had ignited something deep within the human race. The drive to fight, to win, and to never let anyone forget the cost of underestimating Earth. The war had just begun, and it would not end until humanity had won. The survivors, now emerging from the ashes of their once thriving cities, were driven by an indomitable will to survive. The shock of the initial attack had left the world broken, but it was in these moments of despair that the true strength of humanity began to show. Across the globe, in places that were once thought to be beyond hope, small groups of people banded together, determined to fight back. They came from all walks of life: soldiers, doctors, engineers, civilians, each one with a unique skill, but all united by the same fierce desire to not let the invaders claim their world. In the ruins of New York, Sarah, a young engineer who had once worked on the city's power grids, found herself among the survivors who were trying to make sense of the destruction. She was stunned, still processing the loss of her family, her home, but there was a fire in her heart that couldn't be extinguished. She was alive, and she wasn't going to let the aliens take her future away. Like so many others, she had nothing left but the will to fight. Armed with nothing but her skills and determination, she joined a group of survivors who were finding shelter in what was left of the government bunkers deep underground. This was not a time for grieving. It was a time to plan, to regroup, and to strike back. In secret, humanity began to uncover hidden military caches, stockpiled weapons, and technologies that had been hoarded away by governments in case of catastrophic events. What had once been thought of as precautions for a nuclear war became the lifeline for humanity's resistance. But survival wasn't just about finding weapons. It was about adaptation. The human mind, always eager to understand, began to study the wreckage left by the alien invaders. Scavenging alien technology, they began to reverse engineer it, learning its secrets and using that knowledge to create weapons of their own. What started as a desperate fight for survival quickly turned into something more, a rallying cry for every survivor, every person who still clung to life, to take back what was theirs. The alien forces had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and innovate. While they might have destroyed the cities, they hadn't destroyed the spirit of the people. Across the world, survivors communicated with one another, sharing information, organizing, and preparing for what would come next. The resistance wasn't just about fighting. It was about showing the invaders that they had made a mistake, that humanity wouldn't be crushed so easily. The survivors knew the battle wasn't over. They knew that the aliens, after seeing their initial victory, would soon come for another strike, more powerful than the first. But there was something they hadn't counted on: the fire of vengeance that burned in humanity's heart. As the months passed, the people who had once been scattered and defeated began to come together, forging a resistance that was unlike any the invaders had encountered. Humanity wasn't just reacting anymore. They were preparing for a war. The first spark of a counterattack was igniting, and no matter how long it took, no matter the cost, they were going to make the aliens regret underestimating the human race. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for retribution, for a future, for the world they had lost. It was a fight that would unite humanity as never before. And though the aliens may have struck first, they had no idea what was coming for them. The shock of survival had awakened something in humanity, a force so powerful that even the most advanced alien fleets would have a hard time extinguishing it. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the fight for survival began to evolve into a relentless war for revenge. The alien invaders had thought they could easily crush humanity with their superior technology and overwhelming numbers. They had underestimated the sheer force of will that burned inside the human heart. The survivors, though battered and broken, were learning how to fight back, and they were doing it with the very technology the invaders had left behind. The survivors had become resourceful, turning ruined cities and makeshift shelters into hubs of resistance. In the heart of New York City, Sarah and her group of survivors had turned an old subway station into their base of operations, where they studied the wreckage of alien ships and weapons. The technology was strange and foreign, but the humans were quick to adapt. They spent countless hours working in secret, cracking the code of the alien technology. It was a race against time. They knew that the invaders would return soon, and when they did, humanity had to be ready. The war had shifted from mere survival to a battle of intelligence and cunning. It wasn't just about fighting the aliens. It was about turning their own technology against them. Sarah, using her knowledge of engineering, had made significant breakthroughs in understanding the alien power systems. She and her team began designing and building weapons that could rival anything the invaders had brought with them. They knew that in order to defeat their enemies, they had to be smarter, faster, and more determined. Across the globe, similar resistance movements were springing up. From the remains of Europe to the ruins of Asia, people were coming together, bringing with them their unique skills, ideas, and strengths. A network of human resistance forces was forming, each group united by the same goal: to avenge their fallen families, reclaim their homes, and prove to the invaders that they had made a fatal mistake. Meanwhile, the alien forces, who had been initially confident in their dominance, were beginning to notice something strange. The survivors weren't giving up. They weren't fleeing in fear like they had expected. Instead, the humans were fighting back, quietly, but effectively. It was a war of attrition, one small victory at a time, and it was starting to take its toll. The alien fleets, although vast and powerful, were spread thin across the galaxy, trying to control the newly acquired territory they had taken. But the more they conquered, the more they stretched their resources, and the more vulnerable they became. The aliens had assumed that humanity would crumble under the weight of their attack, but the reality was that the human spirit was far stronger than they could have ever anticipated. The survivors were adapting quickly, taking whatever they could from the alien technology and using it to mount a counteroffensive. The first strikes were small, guerrilla-style attacks designed to disrupt the alien supply lines, sabotage their communication networks, and strike fear into the hearts of the invaders. Each success, no matter how small, was a victory for the humans. It was a message that Earth was not done yet. As the war escalated, the human strategy began to change. They no longer were just reacting to the aliens. They were beginning to take the fight to the enemy. Sarah, now one of the leading minds of the human resistance, had developed a bold plan. She and her team had managed to reverse engineer an alien propulsion system from the wreckage of one of their ships. They had created their own version of the alien ships, using the same advanced technology that the invaders had used to destroy Earth's cities. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional, and it gave humanity an edge in the air. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had the means to strike at the heart of the alien fleet. The news of the humans' growing capability spread quickly, and the resistance forces rallied around this newfound hope. They had a weapon. They had the power to fight back. But even as the resistance celebrated their small victories, they knew that this was only the beginning. The aliens were not going to give up without a fight. They would retaliate, and when they did, it would be brutal. But that didn't matter anymore. Humanity had something the aliens didn't: the will to fight, the drive to survive, and the burning desire for revenge. The survivors, having lost so much, now had something worth fighting for: their cities, their families, their lives. They would not let the invaders take them without a fight. The spark of rebellion had turned into an inferno, and nothing, not even the most advanced alien fleets, could extinguish it. Humanity was ready to take the fight to the invaders, to show them what Earth was truly made of. The war was far from over, but the balance was beginning to tip in humanity's favor. The aliens had struck first, but humanity's retaliation was just beginning. As the war raged on, humanity's strength grew with each passing day, and the invaders began to realize the true cost of underestimating Earth. The aliens, initially confident in their overwhelming firepower, soon found themselves facing an unexpected challenge. Their technology, so advanced and deadly, had been met with human ingenuity and resilience that they never saw coming. The resistance forces, now united across the globe, had learned to fight on their terms, using the alien weapons against them, exploiting their weaknesses, and striking when and where it hurt the most. Sarah's team had created a series of devastatingly effective weapons by reverse engineering alien technology, turning the very tools of destruction into instruments of humanity's revenge. The alien ships, once sleek and powerful, were now vulnerable to human-made counterattacks. Armed with their own fleet of modified alien vessels, the Resistance launched their first coordinated strike against the invaders' flagship. The attack was nothing short of audacious. Under the cover of darkness, a small fleet of human ships approached the alien command center, guided by Sarah's tactical brilliance. The alien flagship, once thought to be invincible, now faced a threat unlike anything it had ever encountered. The humans, equipped with the very technology that had once laid waste to their cities, infiltrated the ship's defenses, causing chaos within its ranks. The surprise attack dealt a crippling blow to the alien forces, sending shockwaves through their command. For the first time, the invaders felt the sting of their own vulnerability. The battle was brutal, with both sides suffering heavy losses, but humanity's resolve was unyielding. The resistance fighters, fueled by anger and the memory of their fallen loved ones, fought with a ferocity the aliens hadn't expected. Sarah, leading the charge, coordinated the strikes with precision, using her knowledge of the alien technology to disable key systems on the flagship. It was a gamble, a high-risk mission that could either cripple the alien forces or destroy the human fleet in the process. But the risks didn't matter. For the survivors, this wasn't just a battle, it was personal. Each explosion, each burst of gunfire, was a statement, a defiant cry that Earth was still standing, still fighting, and with each victory, the humans grew bolder. News of the successful strike spread like wildfire, and the morale of the resistance was at an all-time high. The aliens, who had believed they were the dominant force in the universe, were beginning to realize that they had miscalculated. Earth was no longer a helpless planet waiting to be conquered. The balance of power was shifting, and the invaders were starting to feel the pressure. Yet, the war was far from over. The aliens weren't going to retreat. They would regroup and strike back harder than before. But humanity was ready. The resistance had gained invaluable experience from their first victory, and now they knew what they were up against. The alien forces had the advantage in numbers and firepower, but humanity had something far more potent: their spirit. No matter how powerful the invaders were, they could never match the sheer determination of those who had everything to fight for. As the next phase of the war began, the resistance knew that their work was far from done. They had made the first strike, but the aliens would not be easily deterred. But this time, humanity's retaliation had sent a clear message: they would not be defeated. And in that moment, the tide of the war began to turn. The invaders, who had thought Earth was an easy target, were now facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. A united, defiant humanity, ready to reclaim their home and exact their ultimate revenge. The war had reached a critical point, and humanity's resolve had never been stronger. The alien invaders, who had once thought their superior technology would crush Earth's resistance effortlessly, were now beginning to feel the weight of their arrogance. The attack on the alien flagship had shaken them, not only in terms of military losses, but also in terms of their psyche. For the first time, the invaders began to doubt their mission. The humans had shown them that they were not the helpless species they had assumed. The resistance forces, now more organized and coordinated than ever before, were preparing for a counter-offensive that would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Sarah, still leading the charge, knew that this was their moment to strike. If they could hit the aliens hard enough, they might just break their resolve and send them packing. The humans had successfully infiltrated alien technology, and now they were using it to their advantage. They had developed new weapons, stronger defenses, and most importantly, a deep understanding of their enemy. The alien ships, once thought to be indestructible, were no longer the unstoppable force they once were. Humanity had adapted, learned, and turned the tables. Now, the resistance was planning a massive assault on the heart of the alien command structure, a final, decisive strike that would cripple the invaders' ability to wage war. The plan was risky, perhaps even suicidal, but there was no other choice. Sarah had spent countless hours studying the alien fleet's movements, pinpointing weaknesses in their defensive systems. The strike would take place in the heart of the invaders' flagship fleet, deep within their territory. It was a suicide mission for most of the forces involved, but it was the only chance to end the war and reclaim Earth. As the day of the assault drew closer, tensions ran high. The resistance forces, filled with a mixture of fear and determination, prepared for what was to come. The battle would be intense. Both sides knew that this would be the clash that would determine the outcome of the war. The humans had fought tooth and nail to get to this point, and they would not give up now. In the final hours before the battle began, Sarah and her team stood together, looking out at the horizon. They had lost so much: family, friends, homes, but they had gained something even more valuable: hope. They knew that this final fight was not just for survival, but for everything they had left. It was for their planet, their future, and for the generations yet to come. As the first wave of human ships ascended into the sky, the alien fleet had no idea what was about to hit them. The humans had learned to use their own weapons against them, and they had a plan that was as dangerous as it was brilliant. The resistance fighters surged forward, knowing that the future of humanity depended on their success. The battle was fierce. The humans, though outnumbered, fought with everything they had, striking fast and hard, using the alien technology to breach their defenses. The alien ships retaliated with devastating force, but they were no longer the unstoppable juggernauts they had once been. Human ingenuity had tipped the scales, and the invaders' superiority was slowly being shattered, piece by piece. The fight raged on, the air thick with fire and smoke, as the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. In the heart of the battle, Sarah led the charge, guiding her team through the chaos, determined to reach the heart of the alien fleet. She could feel the weight of everything they had lost, but she could also feel the surge of hope as humanity's resolve surged to new heights. With each victory, they were drawing closer to their goal. The final blow was within reach, and Sarah knew that it was only a matter of time before they would deal a crushing blow to the invaders' forces. They were almost there. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back, to survive, and to strike with precision. But now, as the resistance pressed forward, the invaders were realizing that their reign of terror was coming to an end. Humanity's ultimate revenge was on the horizon, and nothing, not even the greatest alien forces, could stop it now. The final battle had arrived, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. Humanity, once on the brink of extinction, had transformed into a formidable force. The alien invaders, who had believed their superiority would crush the human race, were now feeling the full force of humanity's retaliation. The resistance had fought tooth and nail, using every scrap of alien technology at their disposal, turning it against the very invaders who had once wielded it with impunity. The skies were filled with the roar of human ships, their weapons firing with deadly precision as they tore through the once imposing alien fleet. Each battle, each victory, had brought them one step closer to this moment. The final assault on the heart of the alien command structure was a coordinated effort unlike anything humanity had ever attempted. Sarah, leading the charge, knew that this was their last chance. The alien forces were formidable, their fleet vast and deadly, but they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated the human spirit. Sarah's heart pounded as she watched her fleet surge forward, knowing that they had no other choice but to succeed. The aliens, though technologically advanced, had never understood the depth of humanity's will to survive. The resistance had turned desperation into determination, and that had become their greatest weapon. As the battle raged on, Sarah's team pressed deeper into the heart of the enemy's defenses. The alien flagship loomed large before them, a symbol of their might, but to Sarah, it was a target. She knew that if they could bring it down, they would shatter the invaders' command and turn the tide of the war in humanity's favor. But the path to victory was far from easy. The alien fleet retaliated with brutal force, their weapons lighting up the sky with explosions that shook the very fabric of space. Human ships were lost, their crews sacrificed for the greater cause, but each loss only fueled the fire within the resistance. Every soldier, every pilot, every fighter knew that they were fighting for something far greater than themselves. They were fighting for the future of Earth, for their families, and for the generations yet to come. As Sarah led the final assault on the alien flagship, she could feel the weight of the moment. The memories of everything they had lost, everything they had fought for, surged through her. The cries of the fallen echoed in her mind, urging her on. The alien fleet, once so proud and powerful, was now buckling under the relentless assault. The humans had finally found their footing, and they were using it to strike with a force the invaders had never anticipated. The alien flagship trembled as the human ships closed in, their weapons targeting the heart of its defenses. Sarah's ship, leading the charge, was the first to reach the alien vessel's core. With a final, decisive strike, they broke through the flagship's shields, sending a massive shockwave throughout the ship. Explosions ripped through the alien command center as the humans breached the heart of the invaders' operations. The aliens, once so confident in their dominance, were now scrambling, trying to regroup, but it was too late. The resistance had won. The alien fleet began to disintegrate under the weight of the human assault. The tide had turned. Earth was no longer a helpless planet at the mercy of an invader's will. Humanity had proven that their spirit could not be crushed, that their will to survive was far stronger than any weapon, no matter how advanced. As the last alien ship was destroyed and the remaining invaders retreated, a wave of relief and triumph washed over the human forces. The war was over. Earth had been saved. But the cost had been high. So many had given their lives, sacrificed everything they had, to ensure that humanity would have a future. The survivors looked at the wreckage around them, knowing that this victory would be forever etched in the history of their species. It was a testament to the strength, courage, and unwavering determination that had carried them through the darkest days. But as Sarah looked up at the stars, she knew that this was just the beginning. Earth had proven its resilience, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson humanity had taught them. Never underestimate the power of a species fighting for its survival. The future was theirs to shape, and they would rebuild, stronger than ever before. The war had ended, but humanity's journey had only just begun.